Time to get back into the crime.
Into the crime.
Sure.
Yes.
Be adventure, do crime.
Be adventure, do crime, roll dice. Winding your way through this long tunnel with smooth stone walls worn away by the steady flow of water, light can be seen from the exit ahead. Stepping out, you're greeted by greenery, tall forest trees, muddy dirt. The entrance partially obscured by fallen stones that have come from the wall behind you. When you look back behind you at that wall, you can see that there is a patchwork of repairs that have been done over the centuries. Some of it fresh, carefully paved with concrete that covers brick and cobblestone. Other parts a little bit exposed with stone worn away by wind and water. Lichen crawls up the first few feet of the stone wall, the very dense foundation. And to either end, you can see it stretch for miles. Ahead of you, jutting up out of the ground, is the ribcage and claw of some creature that was felled here long, long ago. The bones have been bleached by exposure to the sun, with moss crawling up the sides of the bones that are in the shade, and even little mushrooms poking up where the beast was felled and at the roots of those bones. Otherwise, it's difficult to tell what this creature may have been at first glance, and only some of the creature appears to be here at all. Missing immediately, apparent to you all, is that there is no skull.
Oh.
So no head?
Some giant snail just uses it as a shell now.
Indeed. Perhaps. This is where you find yourself with Clifton Ashglade, the very average human keeper that commands the two skeletons that helped you in your fight against the slugs within the cave. He has his arms crossed over his tunic as he looks around and judges the sight ahead of him, though doesn't seem to have much of interest to say. So we will begin with Plume. Plume, what do you do here in this scene?
So we just walked out of the hole.
Yes.
Okay. So Plume, when everyone walks out, she kind of just immediately... So, like, as soon as we walk out, do we just instantly notice the bones, or is it like...
They are very apparent.
Okay. Upon seeing the bones, Plume kind of just like... She's kind of shaking a little bit, like, where she stands. Because, the thought that there's bones of something so big means that it probably either died from like old age or died to something even stronger than it. So, being how Plume normally is, she immediately just kind of like hides behind Quinn, and she kind of asks the others, does anyone know what the hell this is?
Bones!
Well, yeah, of course these are bones, but like, does anyone know what kind of creature it is?
Oh.
Well, if you get a load of that, it looks kind of like we're... She turns, looks back to him, turns back again. Outside the wall. So, I'd say this is one of the creatures from outside.
We're also helpful.
Yeah, Plume just like looks at Lucis and Warren, and she's like, that doesn't really answer my question.
Warren's gonna be like, yes, I believe, I remember the site, if I'm where I think we are. Yes, the holy hero Spippin D. Winklebottom felled a mighty lizard out here, I do believe. It was quite the fight, I hear. I wish I could experience such a trial of my own.
Plume kind of turns to Warren, and she's like, Winklebottom?
Yes, Spippin D. Winklebottom, quite the hero.
Earth just sort of slowly quirks an eyebrow.
Quinn's really not sure what to make of that. He just kind of stares at Warren for a long moment, debating whether to even ask, and just decides not to.
Oh my god.
This is why we don't let Renard name people.
I'm having regrets myself. Yes.
Clearly a gnome.
You mean the famous noble from the famous noble house Winklebottom?
Of course, I see you've heard of them as well. Quite the astounding house of nobles, I have to say.
You're welcome, Riley.
Yeah, thanks.
You have to work with this now. Warren's like, I've got a brilliant idea. What if we move the giant hand over the hole? Then they'll never get through it.
That's
an idea.
Hey, that's not a bad idea as a stopgap.
I
Warren.
believe it would be too large for us to move.
Oh,
And
nonsense.
that is the problem, yes.
He kind of goes and like looks up and down the hand. And it's like, you know, kind of like pushes on it a little bit, trying to feel how heavy it might actually be.
Make a strength check.
Uh-oh.
Oh god.
Warren's about to get himself destroyed. All right. Strength
Another
is,
natural 20.
A finger falls on him, smushing him flatter than Jason.
I got a 15. That just gets flattened.
So
It's an
This-
Argonaut reference, just for the cultured kids in the chat.
oh,
pick high or low.
low. Like
Low?
my
Okay.
intelligence.
Oh my god. And yet you still somehow knew about these bones.
Okay. So you give this bone
Komodo.
a that was a 7, so a low roll, matched what you had asked for, and so
Excellent.
you give it a pull and then you give it a push, and when you give it a push, whatever cartilage remained that has steadily disintegrated over the centuries gives way, and the first claw starts tilting and tilting and tilting, and eventually it goes further than your hand has pushed, and crack, it hits the second claw, and for a moment there's just a settling of dust and a silence,
Right, back towards the hole. Come on.
and then the second claw begins to twist and turn and lean.
We should probably get the hell out of here.
It's
Yeah.
moving. Oh, it's fine. Look, it'll be easy.
That's going to attract attention.
Warren
Come
seems
on.
unconcerned.
And there's another crack as the second claw hits the third.
Clum is running towards the entrance.
Come on,
Okay.
Warren, time to go.
Warren's like, but why?
Because there are big things that live out in the woods that would eat you in a single bite.
Like the ram.
He looks between the bone and the party for a couple seconds, and he's like, all right, very well, but we do need to do something about this hole. He just kind of unconcerned just walks slowly away from the hand as
And
it
the third claw hits the fourth and crack.
domino.
And the twisting of cartilage and bone sounds much the same as a tree falling over. This grumbling, crackling of sound that echoes off the wall and out into the distance as all four of the claws lean sideways and eventually crash in a great resounding heap amidst the remains of this ancient monster.
Warren's like, see, it'll be completely easy to move. See, look at that. That was super easy. I just pushed it all over. Now we can just carry it piece by piece.
Like a bull in a glass shop.
Yeah, pretty much.
I think you'll find that over and over here are two different things. But for now, back in the hole, all ya.
Back in the
Okay.
hole.
You head back into the hole, and as you do, the final, perhaps, bit that Clume, you notice this because your passive perception is rather high. You notice that it's kind of clear why this hole may have been missed for so long. Amidst the rubble of the remains of part of the wall that's collapsed around here, heading back into the hole, you can see that it's kind of obscured by bush, by stone, by dirt, it's not necessarily easy to spot. Something that you can file away for later. Okay, so Alex, or rather Urist and Adre noticed this on the way in, even though you didn't participate in the combat against the Mimic. You see the corpses of the slugs. You do not see the corpse of the Mimic.
Uh-oh. Uh-oh, Spaghetti-O.
Urst pauses, looks to RJ, sees he noticed as well, looks to the rest of the party. So, you killed that chest good, right?
Yes.
Warren stops and is like, thinks like, I didn't fight a chest. I don't know, what are you talking about?
Yes, I finished it off quite well with my axe.
Urst points to the lack of corpse.
Warren just looks around confused.
Quinn looks over towards the spot and is like, he's very confused, his eyebrows furrow, and he's like, it was there.
It was a dream.
Does anyone know if mimics could imitate people and monsters?
Oh no. Warren's like, he gets real panicky for a second, and he just like looks between everybody, and he looks at
Among
himself.
Us music starts playing.
Don't you get your dander up about that one. We've been within each other's sight the entire time.
I turn Gloom towards fucking Clifton, but he wasn't.
It was.
And besides, mimics have a hard enough time with inanimate objects.
Clifton kind of looks around, like he just kind of wakes up amongst this conversation. He clearly doesn't care about the bones. He doesn't care about any of this kind of stuff. He just kind of perks up. He's like, huh?
What? So Simone?
Huh?
You realize we're gonna have to stab every table in the bar now.
He's been within sight too. Check
And chair.
Check the tent quick.
Rightio! I just starts
Inside.
Why is the person with the lowest wisdom going to check the fucking tent?
because someone asked him to. He's not gonna question why.
Also, because he has the lowest wisdom.
How do you go about checking the
Smashing.
tent, Bernard?
He basically picks something up, shakes it a little bit. Are you a mimic? All right, then puts it back down. Goes to the next thing, picks it up. Are you a mimic? Smashing. Puts it down. Goes to the next. Just.
You do exactly that, and you find no mimics. You come to the conclusion that the mimic indeed has crawled away. You find a slimy, blood-strewn trail that goes into the haystack, or the stack of detritus that's there next to the stones, and then continues out of that, where the blood trail eventually goes cold, but definitely leads back up towards the original entrance that you guys followed into this cavern.
Oh dear.
Ruh-roh. Oh boy, Ifany, I hope
Right.
you're ready. Hold the bar
Let's keep
down.
it moving.
Yeah, we need to track it down.
Okay. So, you continue on the path, winding back up, careful with those of you that don't have dark vision, careful, mindful of the light sources that you're using, whether it's a lantern or a torch or whatever you have. The path winds exactly the way that you came. No surprises, no other turns or other tunnels that connect to this one. It's oddly straightforward. Eventually, you find yourselves crawling past into the entrance of the tavern. The newly made entrance. Here, you and Clifton and his skeletons crawl back up out of the hole, placing a couple of boards back into place to cover the remains. Waiting for you, most of the place has been cleared out, but the lead guard and Adrian Pexius himself, as well as Ifany, standing off to the side, cleaning some of the tables, are all waiting for you.
Has anything emerged from the hole since we went down?
The guard and Adrian look at each other and frown,
Like, uh-oh.
shake their heads. No, can't say that anything has.
During this time, Clume kind of like nudges on Warren, and it's kind of like start checking the chairs.
Rightio then. He starts running around. He just like picks up a chair, shakes it. Then he just puts it down, picks up another chair, shakes it. Don't mind me. Just go back to what you're doing.
Did something happen down in the caves below?
He's just like crookeding all the chairs and everything. Undoing Ifany's work.
That's
Yep.
Anthony's probably gonna get mad at you.
Yeah, it's literally in the chat, everybody's like, I just cleaned that.
But
Would
Wait,
someone
Alex.
please explain why the armored one is shaking and dislodging the chairs?
Mimics.
Mimics. Yeah, yes. We happened to find a mimic. Well, I didn't see it personally, but I'm told there was a mimic down there. And so we're on the pursuit. That's quite exciting. As he picks up another chair, shakes it. I was like, no,
Oh,
not
that's
this one
mute.
either. Puts it down.
Alright, so let's give the basic rundown. First things first, these holes lead down into a cavern that opens up into a slightly larger cavern that was clearly occupied by someone at some point. There is a tent and a bunch of other detritus sitting about.
With bones.
And when we got there, we found, yes, a lot of bones. Small-ish creature bones, or possibly man-sized. Anyway, while we were there, we were attacked by a mimic pretending to be a treasure chest, and also a pair of carrion crawlers.
Indeed.
It was quite the fight.
So, before we get any further into the story, let me note that the mimic corpse, what we thought was a corpse, wasn't there when we came back through.
I understand your concern. No one here has gone into those tunnels after you. And in fact, you've arrived much earlier than we would have expected. But if you say you defeated a mimic, and the mimic's remains were no longer there, I can tell you that no chests or any other creatures have crawled back up out of that hole.
Now, you're right that we're back a little earlier than you probably expected, but that would be because there's a hole.
But indeed, there's a hole right behind you.
No, I'm afraid you misunderstand me. The cavern that we mentioned continues on for a short ways. Not even a very long ways, but a short ways. And opens up outside the wall.
With bigger bones.
At that point, you can see Adrian's face gets very dark and very pale.
It's like,
And the guard's face, and the guard is stiffened up.
Adrian, I do believe we have to talk to someone about this.
I believe you're right. Yeah, he kind of like leans his head forward very
Dark and pale.
seriously while the color
Dark and pale.
drains from his face. So he gets very dark, but he also gets very pale. It's a thing, all right? It's just
It's
read a
like-
book, all right?
Read a book.
It's that thing
Oh.
where you tilt your head forward and shadow covers it like in an anime where nobody can see your
Yeah.
eyes for some
Yes,
reason.
exactly.
The anime
Which is
shadow.
weird since normally your eyes and your eyebrows are visible through all of your hair.
Yep, and then he touches his glasses, and his glasses begin to shine.
According to plan.
No, we're not quite there.
Not quite.
No, I take it back. He turns to the guard and gives him a curt nod, and the guard quickly does a very stiff about-face and marches his way out of the
Understood.
cavern.
Let's see.
Clume kind of walks over to Warren and kind of just like pulls like. Alright, so wait, Warren, is your armor like stiff chainmail, or is it like does it move when you move?
It moves when he moves. It's,
Okay,
it is
so it's like
chainmail.
loose. It's loose.
Yeah, it's loose. Yeah.
Okay, so Plume kind of like tugs a bit on the chain. It kind of like beckons him to tilt his head so she can whisper to him. And she's like, you should probably tell him about the fact you knocked over some bones.
Oh, yes. By the way, the bones outside, their structural integrity was quite unsatisfactory. We were going to use the giant hand to close the hole, but it was kind of fell apart. But I was testing its, durability. It made some noise. Don't worry, I'm sure it'll be fine. But yes, it was the site of the old Spippin D Winklebottom fight. I'm sure you've heard all about that one.
Adrian is kind of like confused for a moment while you're talking about this, but then you mention Spippin D Winklebottom, and his eyebrows kind of go up, and he's surprised and seems like he was about to say, "Ah, yes," and maybe even talk about one of his, a hero that he enjoys the tales of. But then he pauses, he stops himself, and he leans forward again, and he says, You knocked over some of those bones.
Oh yes, it was quite feeble. I just simply tapped on it. It just fell over.
And you say they made a sound.
This is true.
And at that, he kind of like understands that Warren doesn't have the highest wisdom score.
Yeah, it clicks.
Adrian is having doubts about putting this group together. But he... I'm kidding. He kind of takes a look around the group and then turns back to Warren.
Warren has his hands on his hip in like a superhero kind of pose, but his eyes are the little red dots are like narrowed slits as he stares between cup to cup.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
The older gentleman runs a hand over his graying beard and nods to himself a little bit, and he says, I believe it would be best if you all would remain here. Clifton, if you would be so kind. And Clifton quickly hurries up over next to Adrian, and the two of them pull away from the rest of the group to have a conversation. You all go kind of quiet. You maybe glance at each other, glance over at Adrian and Clifton, and you get the sense that they're having a conversation where Clifton, his goal maybe wasn't entirely just to guard you. The gist of the conversation you get is that he was also there to make sure that the report that you gave was accurate. So an extra witness, someone that perhaps Adrian could trust being a part of the Keepers. That's the sense that you get. Okay, so they're waiting for a while. Eventually Adrian and Clifton return to converse with y'all, and there are questions that they ask. Mostly in regards to how big is the hole on the other side, what was the damage to the bones, various things like that. And you give your various accounts from what you see. And it seems that most of their questions have to do with in what way does this lead beyond the walls?
Give Warren some crayons and some paper, he'll draw it out for you.
Yeah. Actually,
Warren, stop eating the crayons. You're not a Marine.
But this one tastes like lemons.
A man steps forward through the tavern entrance, flanked by another guard as well as the head guard that you recognize earlier. The clank of armor and the bark of commands is heard just outside the doors. And stepping forth, you see a golden dragonborn with a red and black tunic and fine pauldrons that come out to a rounded shape on either shoulder. His horns curve back in a gentle wave, and at the front of his muzzle are scaled points that almost mimic the shape of a beard. Adrian immediately steps aside and gives a short bow and says, Lord Daner, welcome to my fine establishment.
Oh.
He says in as clear a voice as he can manage. Clifton as well kind of steps aside, but more as in a nervous sort of, don't notice me sort of way. He immediately takes stock of the situation. His brown eyes scanning the room, taking in the odd assortment of fellows, the fire ganassi off to one side, the human and the wendigo, and the goblin and the herongon and the dwarf. The average human keeper standing off to the side, and he steps forward and begins. My name is Gregion Daenor. I am the head guard of this region. I've heard that a hole has been opened up in the wall.
Turning towards Warren. Apparently a battle fought by one...
Spippin' D. Winklebottom. I'm sure you've heard of the tales.
Jesus fucking Christ.
The Dragonborn furrows his brow and he says, yes, the site of the victory of the great Winklebottom.
Oh my god.
One of my favorite stories. I one day hope to be as powerful as Mr. Winklebottom was.
Allow me to speak with Mr. Pexius about this matter. We'll see what can be done. If you would all be so kind as to wait right there. On behalf of the tavern, the land, and the people that you saved, I wish to award each of you a sum of 200 gold out of my personal coffers.
Oh.
Now, I gave you all 50 gold ahead of time,
Mhm.
so he gives you each a pouch containing 150 gold. Arcala has stood for a long time. This hole presents a threat that we haven't dealt with ever before. We've had many a monster hammer on the outside of these walls, and they've stood. The fact that we have an entry that is unguarded and unnatural presents a unique challenge to our people.
Fear not, poor Warren Walker. We'll keep the city safe. Make sure all the temples are aware of this. I don't want to miss out on any good stories or any divine rituals that may be taking place in my name.
Erst has a small cough and then continues with, but what is this? Oh, but what is the city's response going to be?
Well, the city's slow, and that's the main problem. What we need are eyes on the issue. We're going to be posting guards at the top of the mountain to make sure that nothing goes in or out of that hole, including on the inside of this side, and we'll be scouring the inside for that mimic that you mentioned before. The problem is, we don't know what created that hole in the first place, how those bugs got in, and how those bugs decided to dig exactly into the center of town.
Yeah, that was a little disconcerting.
So, Clume at this point does the old tug onto Quinn and says, can you let them know that the entrance was, for the most part, kind of covered? I think whoever made the hole wanted it to stay hidden.
We'll have to perform our own investigation. As it stands, I would have a job for the lot of you if you're willing to accept it.
We'll speak. We're certainly willing to hear you, and the drinks are on tap.
More chances to become recognized by the gods. Of course, I'm not going to turn down such an opportunity.
Kind of crosses his arms over his chest. Looks quite serious, looks out back towards the guards posted at the door that are... You can see that they're actually turning people away that are asking if the tavern is open.
Oh, no.
And he says the number one thing that we have to do is make sure that news of this hole stays quiet. The last thing we want is a panic. People thinking that some other place might be safer than this one. So, instead of hiring some outside people, I'd like to hire you directly.
And what exactly would we be doing?
Scouting the area around where this hole was made, making sure nothing is coming to this side of the wall. seeing if you can find any more information about how that hole was created, who dug it up, who lived in that campsite, how that mimic got there, and whatever else you can uncover.
I do know the lay of the land outside the wall quite well.
Right. I've heard of you.
Oh,
Oh,
When?
good things, right?
yes. And he kind of bows his head a little more formally this time. And he says, yes, or Jean Quinol.
Right. I have heard of you. One of my guards at the wall says they've seen you go in and out without even any concern for your personal well-being.
I'm very capable of taking care of myself.
Not many people can say the same. It's good to have you if you'd be willing to be part of this team.
When like glances sideways, especially towards Warren, just thinking to himself, I'm agreeing to be on a team with this guy.
Warren's just bouncing in his seat like, oh man.
First, meanwhile, gives a little nod. It is not my usual arena, but it is something that I think I can contribute to.
Well, tell you what. I know this one, Jean Quinol, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. Who are the rest of you?
Buddhist Eshtan of Clan Eshtan.
Warren
Interesting.
completely forgetting that he's already introduced himself several times. Warren Walker, soon to be paladin of, well, some god or goddess. I'm sure they'll notice me at some point, but until then, Warren Walker, paladin and hero of the people.
Right.
Right.
And you?
I am Adre Goddard, mage of no renown, and someone who is dumb enough to do business on the other side of the wall already, so why change it now?
A mage. That's unusual.
Well, that's unusual.
And you, little one.
Boom kind of just like looks at the whole party and then kind of just like she gets up from Quinn's lap, walks over to the table, grabs a napkin, pulls out a quill from her hair and writes her name and gives it to him.
He takes the thing, reads it, says, "Moolk."
Plume looked over to Quinn and she's like, I forgot I wrote it in Goblin. And then she actually tells him his name. Her name.
I was just thinking that he, like, the way that you handed it to him, it ended up being upside down.
Yeah.
He read it through the back of the napkin.
Yeah. Good to know you all. I'll remember your names. And if you can help us with this, your names will be remembered far and wide. Now, if it's all the same to you, I have to report to people up above my head so that we can get this thing closed up once and for all. Okay, so the town is yours. You can drag and drop your characters onto the map as you see fit.
So Quinn, I mean, he feels he's fairly set at the moment for armor and weapons. You know, everything's still in pretty good shape. One thing that has been on his mind is the gem that Clume found in what he assumed at the time had been a dead mimic.
Aha.
So he's very curious about it. So I feel like he'd want to go and seek out Mora to maybe just get a second opinion on like what it might be, you know, or try to figure out like why it seems so familiar to him.
Okay. So this is fantastic. Go ahead and place your icon kind of on the map, and I'll kind of show you whereabouts Mora is.
Also, at this point, before breaking, I said that Clume would follow Quinn, so
Okay.
Clume is following Quinn during this.
Fantastic. So in order to get to Mora's place, you follow some paths back in between kind of the area of the middle class and the lower class.
Mm-hmm.
And wiggling your way into one of the more dense structures that in and of itself was made up of several other structures that eventually came together to be this one solid tower. where walls and fences were built in to create a sturdier foundation so that the building could be made even taller than that. And to get to Mora's place, she's not on the first floor. She's on the 12th.
Jesus Christ.
Uh-huh.
And you've got to go up some staircases.
enough.
So you climb some flights of stairs. It's rather familiar to you. You've done this. Clume kind of putters along behind
Clume
you, bouncing.
Quinn is giving Clume a piggyback ride up these stairs.
Yep, maybe
Wow.
part of the way.
Yep.
Goodness.
And
Good strength.
and eventually you get to Mora's place. It's a thin and long apartment. Long because it reaches not only the outer edge, where there's a small balcony where she can often be seen smoking on the outside balcony, but also in to meet with the doors that are on the inner circle of this apartment. They can look all the way down to a courtyard at the very, very base of the apartment building. And you knock on her door. There's a little wreath that she's hung up on the outside of her door that looks a little bit wilted by now, and that rustles when you knock on the door. And you hear the scuffling of feet, and the door opens a moment later, and there Mora is, smiling her big, "Oh, you've brought me something" smile. She says, "Quinn! Oh, and little Clume.
More.
Hi.
Welcome. Come in. And she gestures you in. It's a tight space. You kind of have to slide in sideways, but it opens up into her living space, adorned with a variety of goods that she's decided are too valuable to just sell normally, that she would rather keep for herself. Curios, shelves stacked with various books and various artifacts and statuettes and other things arranged in front of a desk that is a long work desk where she cleans and maintains some of the items that she sells. Sometimes she also has to remove any markings of ownership, such as engravings on rings. And this is where she will use her files and picks and other delicate tools to do exactly that. But she gestures you in, and she offers you thin stools that she uses for her guests. Each one topped with a worn cushion that is starting to get a little bit threadbare. There's a smell of herbs in the air, likely the same stuff that she smokes outside, but because she keeps all of that outside, the air in here is pretty breathable. But she welcomes you in, she bids you to sit on the chairs, and she herself sits on the edge of her desk. And she says, Quinn, tell me what you've brought me.
Okay, I just want to say I love her already.
Great!
Great. So Quinn will start reaching into his bag, and he'll say, Plume and I had... Because he wants to be vague, because he remembers how Captain Daynor told them to keep the whole thing a little hush-hush, and he's not really sure how much he wants to say of, like, the tunnel they explored.
Okay.
So Quinn just says, Plume and I had a run-in with a mimic. And he reaches into his bag, and he pulls out the stone, whatever the hell this thing is.
Gemstone, yeah.
Yeah, gemstone. And so he kind of pulls it out, he shows it to her, and he says, she found this with it in it. It feels familiar, but I'm not sure why, so I thought I would get a second opinion.
Ah, well, isn't that a beautiful rock? Let's take a look. And she carefully takes it from you, and she places it on her desk, and she brings out a... she lights a lantern to give some extra illumination. She winds out a stiff metal arm with a magnifying glass on it, and she leans
And it
in
bites
close.
her.
And it bites her. Nice. But she takes a close look at it, and she says, well, Quinn, of course, this would look familiar. Come, take a look. And she bids you over to the magnifying glass.
All right, Quinn, curious now, we'll get up and go take a look.
And
what is it?
you can see that this gem looks like somehow within the center of it has been etched runes. The same ones that you've been studying.
Oh. His ears kind of perk up.
Kloom's kind of like trying to like get up. She's like doing like little hops to try and look on top of the table because her little stubby legs, she can't see the top of it.
Mora realizes this and she like wraps her arms around Kloom's waist and picks her up to have a better look as well.
Interesting. And would he recognize the rune or runes that are inscribed within it?
Yes, because they're very simple.
Okay.
In a way that reminds you perhaps of a child learning their first letters. And if it weren't for the simplicity of it, it takes away from the fact that these were not carved on the outside surface of this gem.
Mhm.
They were embedded inside of the semi-opaque golden brown essence material of this gem without splitting it open. And these simple runes say two words that you recognize in the tongue of the runic language that you've been studying. One is food, and the other is lure, like L-U-R-E.
Huh.
Oh. Could that? Well, you know what, Kloom wouldn't know because freaking Quinn is the studier of runes, so never mind.
Mhm. Strange. These runes are almost childlike in writing. And it just says food and lore. Lore. He's not really sure. Yeah, he's not really sure what to make of it, really.
You're gonna have a mimic stalking you for the rest of forever.
Oh, no.
You said you found this in the body of a mimic?
Yes.
Could a mimic have eaten this?
He looks at it, tilts his head.
Food lure.
Oh.
Kloom kind of like interjects, and she's like, I found this within the guts of it. It probably swallowed it.
I suppose so.
Mora gives Kloom a little pat on the head. Oh, you're just the bravest little thing, aren't you?
Aww.
Reach inside a mimic's guts. My goodness. Well, let's see if this thing is magical, shall we? Let's see if it's got anything about it. And she begins rifling through her tools and eventually procures a long metal rod, at the end of which is a claw. It looks like a very crudely shaped dragon's claw that is holding a pearl. And she brings the wand very, very slowly closer, and you can tell her eyes are on the tip, on that pearl. And she brings it closer. She brings it closer. She brings it closer until it touches the gemstone, and nothing happens. Then she shrugs and said, "Well, there's no magic left in this thing," and puts the tool away.
Well,
Kloom kind of looks at Quinn, and she's like, maybe you can, I don't know, she kind of makes like a little explosion kind of animation with her hands, invoke some kind of runic magic into it and give it some power back?
perhaps. I suppose if ever we need to lure something away, it could help. So...
So you're not going to sell it to me?
Not right now. I think I would rather keep this one.
Listen, Quinn.
Listen.
I can't be identifying every little rock that you bring by.
For free.
Quinn says, "What if? Well, that's fair."
Plume's kind of like, well, we are about to do some guard work. What if we find some more possibly magical items, we bring it to you and potentially sell them?
See, now you're speaking my language. So you've got to listen to your little friend a lot more, Quinn. They really know what they're talking about.
Quinn,
They really know
Quinn
how to
just like
line my
silently
pockets.
rolls his eyes.
So, tell me about this guard duty. Why were you fighting a mimic?
Quinn kind of
yeah.
looks at Clume, like gives her a silent look of "Please don't say anything else."
It's like, please stop.
And then he looks.
Clume, like, realizing the stare, she's just like gives Quinn kind of like not a wink, but like a stare of, oh, don't worry, I'll keep my mouth shut. Just speak.
So he looks back at Mora and he says, "Well, Clume and I were at the Axe and Boot earlier, and all of a sudden the floor burst open and these
Oh no.
giant bugs crawled out of it.
Really?
Quite a shock, yes. I'm sure the whole town will be abuzz with that news soon enough."
Well, I'll be happy that you brought me the news first. Did a mimic follow those bugs out?
"Yes," Quinn quickly says.
Make a deception check.
Oh
Yes.
my god.
"Oh god, I'm not good at this."
I believe
Oh,
in
this,
you.
oh, this is gonna be.
No,
this is
wait,
gonna
wait,
be really
wait,
bad.
wait,
It's too
before
late.
you say, before you say if it passes or fails, before you say that,
Okay.
since Plume is right by Quinn,
Yes.
she's going to cast guidance on Quinn. So
Okay.
add, I think that is a D4. Yeah, roll a D4 and add it to it.
Okay, so what are the components to guidance? Verbal, somatic, material? What's going on there?
It's concentration up to 1 minute.
Yeah, but what are the materials required
Verbal,
to cast it?
I think.
Verbal? Just
Yeah.
so what do you say in order to cast it?
So, like, what would I say in order? It would kind of be like Plume would kind of
Go ahead.
kind of just like agree, like as she's agreeing with Quinn, she's like Clume's kind of like, yeah, that's right. But as she's saying that, she's kind of like,
That's how you push in your guidance?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's fine, and it's a D4, right? So we can take that
Yes.
4 that you rolled. That's fine.
Typically, when spells are cast, yeah, you gotta speak the magic languages, which means that if somebody nearby is to hear you, they might be able to figure out you're doing magic of some sort.
Right. In a lot of cases, as long as like the intent is there, especially with something like a cantrip like guidance, a lot of times it's not too stiff on what the verbal component is.
Just so.
But so we you roll your deception, you just say yeah, and then Clume's like, yeah, that's right.
So it's 15 altogether.
yeah. And by the
so-
way, chat, Ariane rolled a 4 just for those.
Yeah,
who couldn't
sorry, I
see.
rolled a 4 with the
Yeah.
extra D4. Yep.
Yeah.
And an 11 originally. So Mora doesn't press. She just kind of raises her eyebrows, looking demure as ever, and says, "That is absolutely wild."
It was indeed. It was quite an experience.
I bet. And now, because of your heroic deeds, the great Quinn and Clume, you've been hired on by the captain of the guard or something?
Yes, they want us to help investigate why this happened.
And she kind of stumbles a little bit and she says, "Wait, actually the captain of the guard told you to do this."
Yes, Captain Daynor himself.
Captain Gregian Daynor told you to do this.
Yes. And Quinn nods his head like, yes.
Yes.
For a moment, Mora is just like, her eyes go a bit wide. She leans back against the desk. She crosses her arms, and then it's like in real time, you can see a plan being formed across her face.
Oh boy.
Where she says, where it's just, whoa, I didn't realize that Quinn was talking with such important people, and then it shifts over to, Well, this could be interesting.
This could be beneficial to me.
So,
Yeah.
so she leans in a little bit closer and she says, I haven't ever met the man. How did he look?
I mean, what was he, Riley? Like a dragonborn, right?
He's a gold dragonborn.
Dragonborn.
Yep.
With
Well,
black and red kind of armor pattern colors.
Mm-hmm. I mean, he was dragonborn, golden scales, wore red and black armor. Quinn wasn't really paying that much attention. He just kind of shrugged.
It's like,
Looked like a
Really?
fairly normal dragonborn to me.
The Captain Gregian Danor is just a normal dragonborn. Quinn! Help a
Quinn-
girl out!
help a girl out.
Okay. So tell you what I need you to do is take a little bit of a closer look next time you meet him, okay? Don't miss a detail. I want to know everything.
right.
I want to know how his horns are curved. I
Oh
want to know
my
how rich
God.
his eyes are, if
Oh.
they're red, if they're green. I want to know what he's wearing, if he's got any jewelry.
Oh, she's
I want to
thirsty.
know what his office is like.
trying
I
to get a
need
lookup.
details.
May I ask why? What is your fascination with him?
Listen, I just, for a friend, have an interest on their behalf.
This girl thirsty.
She's thirsty.
And I need to know
goodness.
more about Captain Daner. It's not every day that he comes out of his office.
Marry up my guy.
All right. Very well.
So throws.
I'll
Listen.
look a little more closely at him next time.
I'll sweeten the deal. You get me some details like that, I'll give you 10 gold. How's that sound?
Oh, baby.
Free money?
All right. Very well.
But I expect detail, especially
It's
about how he
autobiography.
dresses. Understand?
How about
How about?
if you give me 20 gold, I'll even draw a picture of him.
No.
Oh. And you're not going to miss any details in the picture.
It's that guy.
No, of course
Of
not.
course
You know
not.
how detailed my maps are.
Cut
Full
to
body
stick figure
or-
drawing dragon horns.
Just a portrait.
Full body.
Full body.
20 gold it is.
20 gold it is.
Deal.
Okay.
Oh my
It's rare that I
God.
ever pay you for things like. Well, I guess I do rather often give you things, but usually I receive material things. So, but I guess a drawing would be. Let's call it that. Yes. Okay, that's very good. Off you go meet him, go talk to him, do this quest, do this guard duty, and then give me the details, and I will give you the coin.
All right. We'll see you around. And Quinn's also sure to just grab the gem on the way out. Just doesn't want to forget that.
Very good, very good.
When right
Newton.
before they leave, Kloom kind of like wraps her arms around Mora's neck, gives her a hug, and then hops out and follows
Yep,
Quinn
and she
out.
gives you a good squeeze. Take care, pumpkin. Let's you off.
Aw.
New quest get a portrait for an admirer question mark.
Mark.
This lady's giving off hefty wine ant vibes.
Tourist heads on back to her father's smithery.
Okay.
And upon arrival, there's a fairly gruff greeting, which begins with her plunking down another 62 gold onto the counter.
Oh.
In Dwarven, she says in the proper manner, "Dear father, worked wonders. Thank you."
Noter. Good to hear.
Doter.
So wait, when we all, if any of us speak Dwarvish in the future, we have to speak like that.
Yes. He's sitting back in his chair, large, squat, desk coming up about, maybe knee to waist height to a human, but, proper size for a dwarf. And he's leaning back with his arms stitched across, or his hands stitched across his belly, relaxing as he smokes a pipe. listening to you, but you can kind of tell from his mannerisms that something's bothering him.
She sort of tilts her head and then proceeds to bring up the elephant in the room. Is something bothering you, Father?
Takes a deep breath, long drag on his pipe, sets the pipe down, leans back in his chair, finally just says, "Hole in the wall."
And she takes her own deep breath without because she is 1 second. This is going to double as a shall we say courtly straight-faced check.
Okay. Very good.
Which thanks to being a there we are, Silver Tongue. Thanks to being an eloquence bard, that actually goes up another 3 points, and because I can't roll beneath a 10 for those checks.
Okay, so you have a 14 effectively.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And she simply asks, "Pardon?"
He glances your way, meets your eyes for a moment, then looks back at the wall of heirlooms, and says again, "There's a hole in the wall."
And she leans forward a little bit, clearly interested, but still cautious. "And how will you be hearing this?"
Takes another deep breath and lets it out slow. "Grobert." And Grobert, you know, is one of the guards that has befriended your father, and is likely one of the guards that was there when Captain Daenor was talking to you.
She quirks an eyebrow. "Did you box his ears for blabbing about things he shouldn't be?"
"I did."
She nods, then continues. "So, there are two holes to plug. How's that one?"
"Be needing stone. Good stone. Can't just collapse the tunnel."
She nods. "Didn't think so." Ceilings aren't dwarf work. Comes up right against the axe and boots. close to the surface. Didn't have to worry about a number of things going down in the meantime.
Aye. Good stone. But to get good stone, we need good nobles. Arkala don't have too many of them.
There's Erst makes a gesture that to most other people probably wouldn't mean much, but to her father is obviously she's patting the book in her vest. Aye, 'tis be true.
AKA, no shit.
Got someone in mind. Need you to talk for me.
Talking is the one thing I can do. We both know this.
Right. One person could get you connected.
She nods. Let's discuss the details.
The deets.
Flint Thunderforge.
Oh, there's a name.
Of the famed Thunder Forges, or the branched Thunder Forges?
The famed are competitors.
She nods slowly. There's a long and storied history there, which is at best friendly rivalry.
Mm-hmm. Thunderforge knows a man. Could help us get some assistance from the north.
From the north.
How far north are we thinking?
Are we talking like city far north, or are we like the north of the city?
The northest north.
That's some
The
north.
cold regions.
Yefshire.
I'm sorry, I want you to say that again, please.
Yefshire.
Okay.
The
Don't even start, chat. Don't even start.
If my contact with the trading convoy is as honorable as a steel, and it should be, Yefshire may have the material that we're looking for.
Oh, I bet they have the material we're looking for.
Yeah.
Renard, do you have a bonk emote?
Only for myself. I don't have them.
We shall work on this.
Dr. Thunderforge, learn about the man. Make a connection. Get the material.
She nods, considers this for a little bit. Now let me to get a moment to take this into my notes as well, just so I don't lose track here.
And for the benefit of chat, as I explain this, Yefshire is an elven city far to the north. The information that you know from the trading convoy is that they actually don't use giant walls to protect their village, but actually work with nature itself. More importantly, the people of Yefshire are known to be quite honorable, honest people, intent to help others. You all are effectively let to enjoy the rest of the evening. You each were given directions on where Captain Danor's office is, and would be effectively to your own devices to do your investigation beyond the hole in the wall. So,
But,
what we'll do... Yes.
I was gonna ask, what time
It's like
is it, like,
hundreds of gold.
outside?
It's getting to the evening. The shadow of the wall is beginning to creep across the roads and engulf the city in shade.
Ooh.
Workers light the various lamps along the streets as not only the shadow dims over Arcala, but the sun finally sets and the sky goes from orange to purple to that deep navy blue, and the stars come out above. There's not a cloud in the sky to interrupt the beautiful view of the half moon and the twinkling stars above the city. And each of you in turn lays down, finding your rest, replenishing your spell slots and your HP, as you do. And sleep comes to you after a long day of digging through tunnels and fighting monsters and making new acquaintances and working with a brand new team. Warren, you go to bed. And your eyes, perhaps they don't close because of your nature as a Wendigo.
It was a Wendigo.
I imagine the red light in your eyes
Just turns
dims
off.
until it kind of flickers and fades. And your body lies still. And the various pendants and religious icons that you would normally have about your neck are hung on a hook by your bedside.
They start sassing with each other against,
Yeah.
Nice.
And you fall into slumber. And Warren, as your body lies still, and your mind begins to dream, you dream of a mountain.
Ooh.
A mountain capped with snow in the distance. Jagged and defiant against a roiling sky of clouds. And from that mountain, there is a shivering rumbling. You can see it. It becomes blurry for a moment, and then it gets closer to you and closer to you. A boom, a crumbling of rock, like thunder but greater, shaking the ground beneath you and getting more and more intense as this crushing tide of rock begins to surge towards you, rumbling, crashing, cracking against one another, creating an absolute deafening cacophony of noise, and then it stops.
Oh.
And before you is a wall of stone. Stone frozen in motion. Defying gravity, defying physics as it hovers in place, surrounded by dust and the otherwise impossible chaos of this landslide that is moments away from engulfing you. Mm-hmm. And within that stone, as you find yourself unable to tear your gaze away, you can see that if you turn your body, and you do indeed turn your body in this dream, that this frozen chaos of stone and natural disaster begins to resolve into features, into a face. And just as you realize that, you wake up.
Oh,
Oh, so close.
And that is where we're going to pause for the night.
Oh.
or it's like, it happened.
Yeah, Caden actually called it even as I was like coming. Yeah, wow. There you go.
Yeah, someone Tia called